The blood-red sunset painted the Nebraska sky as Daisy Winters stood on the gallows, the rough hemp of the noose scratching her delicate neck. Her crime: loving Bernard Holloway, the notorious outlaw who had terrorized 3 counties before meeting his violent end at the hands of the law. The year was 1876, and in the small town of Redemption Creek, justice was swift and unforgiving for those who chose the wrong side. "Any last words, Miss Winters?" Sheriff Thompson asked, his weathered face showing no emotion. Daisy's eyes scanned the crowd, stopping when they met a pair of intense blue ones belonging to a tall stranger leaning against a hitching post. He tipped his Stetson slightly, a gesture so subtle only she noticed. "I loved unwisely, but I loved true," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent town square. Just as the executioner reached for the lever, shots rang out. Chaos erupted as the stranger vaulted onto the platform, slicing through her bonds with a gleaming knife. "Come with me if you want to live," he whispered, pulling her from the gallows. "Who are you?" Daisy gasped as they raced toward 2 waiting horses. "Name's August Reed," he replied, lifting her onto a Palomino mare, "and I believe you deserve a second chance." As bullets whizzed past them, August and Daisy galloped out of Redemption Creek, leaving behind a cloud of dust and shattered expectations. The sun dipped below the horizon, and with it, Daisy's old life vanished forever. August led them through twisting ravines and hidden passes, places only a man intimate with the landscape would know. Hours passed before he finally slowed their pace, guiding them to a small creek sheltered by cottonwoods. "We should be safe here for the night," he said, dismounting and helping Daisy down. In the silver moonlight, she finally got a good look at her rescuer. August Reed was tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that spoke of hardship and determination. A thin scar traced his jawline, and his hands were calloused from years of hard work. Yet there was a gentleness in his eyes that made her breath catch. "Why did you save me?" Daisy asked, wrapping her arms around herself as the night chill set in. August built a small fire, careful to keep it low enough not to attract attention. Because what they were doing wasn't justice, it was vengeance, and vengeance has no place in true law. "You speak as though you know something about law," she observed. "I used to be a federal marshal," he admitted, offering her his coat, "until I saw too much injustice done in the name of justice." Daisy accepted the coat gratefully. "So now you save condemned women from the gallows." A smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Just the innocent ones." "I'm not innocent," Daisy confessed. "I loved Bernard, I knew what he was." "Loving the wrong man isn't a crime punishable by death," August replied firmly. "Besides, I know more about your situation than you might think." "What do you mean?" Bernard Holloway wasn't just an outlaw. He was working for someone powerful, someone who wanted him silenced once he became a liability. August's eyes grew hard, and they were willing to hang you to tie up loose ends. Daisy's mind reeled with this information. "Who, Judge Prescott?" August said. "The same man who sentenced you to hang." The name hit Daisy like a physical blow. Judge Everett Prescott was the most respected man in the territory, known for his unflinching dedication to law and order. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I've been tracking his operations for 2 years. August explained. "Prescott uses outlaws like Bernard to eliminate his competition and expand his land holdings. When they become liabilities, he has them eliminated and makes examples of anyone connected to them." Daisy stared into the fire, memories flooding back. Bernard's mysterious meetings, the large sums of money, his growing paranoia in the weeks before his death. "Where are you taking me?" she asked finally. "There's a place about 3 days' ride from here, a small ranch owned by a friend of mine. You'll be safe there while I gather the evidence needed to bring Prescott down." "And then what?" August looked at her thoughtfully. "Then you're free to build whatever life you want." Daisy laughed bitterly. "What life? I'm a dead woman walking." "Everyone I knew thinks I'm either dead or an outlaw." "Then become someone new," August suggested. "The West is full of people reinventing themselves." They fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire crackled between them. Daisy studied her rescuer surreptitiously. There was something compelling about August Reed, something that went beyond his physical appearance or his act of heroism. She sensed in him a kindred spirit, someone who understood what it meant to lose everything and start again. "Get some rest," August said finally. "We have a long ride ahead of us tomorrow." Daisy nodded, curling up by the fire with his coat draped over her. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the gallows, felt the noose tightening around her neck. But worse than that was the memory of Bernard's betrayal, how easily he had used her affections while working for a corrupt judge. Morning came with a pale golden light filtering through the cottonwoods. Daisy awoke to find August already up, brewing coffee over a rekindled fire. "You're an early riser," she observed, smoothing her tangled auburn hair. "Old habits," he replied, handing her a tin cup of strong black coffee. "In my line of work, sleeping too heavily could get you killed. And what exactly is your work now, since you're no longer a marshal?" August considered her question. "I suppose you could call me a man seeking justice outside the law, since the law itself has been corrupted." "A vigilante," Daisy supplied, "if you like." He shrugged, packing up their meager supplies, though I prefer to think of it as restoring balance. They rode hard through the morning, keeping to less traveled paths and wooded areas whenever possible. August was quiet but vigilant, frequently checking their back trail for signs of pursuit. By midday, they reached a small trading post run by an elderly couple. August approached cautiously, instructing Daisy to remain hidden in the trees. "The Thompsons are good people," he explained, "but the fewer who see your face, the better." Daisy watched as August spoke with the old man, exchanging money for supplies. Their conversation seemed friendly, with no signs of alarm or recognition. Within 15 minutes, he returned with food, ammunition, and a bundle of clothing. "For you," he said, handing her the bundle. "Mrs. Thompson was happy to part with some things, said they might fit you well enough." The bundle contained a simple calico dress, undergarments, a sturdy pair of boots, and a wide-brimmed hat, practical clothing for a woman traveling in the frontier. "Thank you," Daisy said sincerely. "I'll find a place to change. There's a creek just over that rise. I'll keep watch from here." Daisy walked to the creek, grateful for the chance to wash away the grime of the jail and their escape. The cool water revived her spirits, and when she donned the clean clothing, she felt like a new person. The dress was a bit large, but with some adjustments, it served its purpose. When she returned to August, his eyes widened slightly before he quickly averted his gaze. "Much better," he commented. "You look less like a fugitive and more like a rancher's wife now." "Is that what I'm supposed to be?" Daisy asked, swinging up onto her horse with practiced ease. "For now. The story is that we're heading to meet your brother in Silveridge. Keep it simple, the best lies always are." They continued their journey through the afternoon, the landscape gradually changing from wooded riverbanks to rolling prairie. August pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his travels, revealing a deep knowledge of the territory and its history. "How did you become a marshal?" Daisy asked as they rode side by side across an open stretch of grassland. August was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. "My father was killed by outlaws when I was 16, he finally said. "The local sheriff did nothing, turned out he was being paid to look the other way. I decided then that I wanted to be the kind of lawman who couldn't be bought." "What changed?" "I discovered that the corruption went all the way to the top. For every criminal I brought in, there were 3 more being protected by judges, politicians, and wealthy landowners." His jaw tightened. "When I started asking questions, my superiors suggested I take an extended leave. When I refused, my badge was taken." "That's when you became a balance restorer," Daisy suggested with a small smile. August chuckled, the sound warming something inside her. "Something like that. I realized I could do more good working outside the system than within it." "And Judge Prescott? How does he fit into all this?" "Prescott controls most of the territory through fear and corruption. He's built an empire by forcing small ranchers and farmers off their land, using men like Bernard to do his dirty work." The mention of Bernard's name cast a shadow over Daisy's face. "I was such a fool," she whispered. August studied her profile against the setting sun. Love has a way of blinding even the sharpest eyes. It wasn't just love, Daisy admitted. It was the promise of escape. I grew up in a dying mining town with a father who drank away what little we had. Bernard offered adventure, excitement, a different life. And what kind of life would you choose now, given the chance? August asked. Daisy considered the question. A simple one, I think, somewhere peaceful where I could see the stars at night without fear. A worthy dream, August nodded. Everyone deserves peace. As twilight descended, they made camp in a sheltered draw. While August tended the horses, Daisy prepared a simple meal from their supplies. They ate in companionable silence, the prairie stretching endlessly around them under a canopy of emerging stars. We should reach my friend's ranch by tomorrow evening, August said as they finished their meal. You'll be safe there while I continue to Silveridge to gather evidence against Prescott. And if you don't return, Daisy asked quietly. August's eyes met hers across the fire. Then Daniel will help you start that new life you're dreaming of. The thought of August not returning created an unexpected hollow feeling in Daisy's chest. In just 2 days, this stranger had become her lifeline, her only connection to a future beyond the gallows. I'd prefer if you did come back, she said simply. Something flickered in August's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or a deeper emotion he quickly masked. I'll do my best, he promised. They settled in for the night, August taking the first watch while Daisy tried to sleep. Her dreams were troubled, filled with images of Bernard's betrayal, Judge Prescott's cold eyes, and the sound of gallows being built. She woke with a start to find August kneeling beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. Easy, he murmured. You were calling out in your sleep. Embarrassed, Daisy sat up, pushing her hair from her face. I'm sorry, don't be. Nightmares are to be expected after what you've been through, he offered her his canteen. Do you want to talk about it? Daisy took a long drink of water. I keep seeing Bernard's face the day they caught him. He looked right at me before they shot him, and there was nothing in his eyes, no love, no regret, just emptiness. August nodded. Men like Bernard don't know how to love, they only know how to use people. And I let myself be used, Daisy said bitterly. You saw what you wanted to see, August corrected her. We all do that sometimes. The gentleness in his voice broke something inside her. To her horror, tears began streaming down her face, tears she had refused to shed during her trial, during her time in jail, even as she stood on the gallows. Without hesitation, August moved closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Daisy leaned into his strength, allowing herself this moment of vulnerability. I don't know who I am anymore, she confessed against his chest. Daisy Winters, the naive girl who fell for an outlaw's charm, is dead. But I don't know who's taken her place. Whoever you want, August said softly. That's the gift of starting over, you get to decide. Daisy lifted her head, suddenly aware of their proximity. August's face was inches from hers, his eyes reflecting the starlight. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her, and more surprisingly, she realized she wanted him to. Instead, he gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and stood up. Try to get some more sleep. I'll wake you at dawn. Dawn arrived with an ominous bank of dark clouds on the western horizon. August studied them with concern as they broke camp. Storm's coming, he observed. We need to make good time before it hits. They rode hard through the morning, the clouds gathering speed behind them. By midday, the wind had picked up considerably, carrying the scent of rain. There's an old line shack about an hour ahead, August shouted over the wind. We can shelter there until the storm passes. Daisy nodded, pulling her hat lower to keep it from blowing away. The temperature had dropped rapidly, and her thin dress offered little protection against the chill. They reached the line shack just as the first heavy drops began to fall. It was a simple one-room structure, weathered by years of exposure but still sound. August quickly tended to the horses, securing them in a lean-to attached to the back of the shack, while Daisy assessed their temporary shelter. The interior was sparse but serviceable: a small iron stove, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, and a narrow cot pushed against one wall. Dust covered everything, but the roof appeared intact, and a stack of firewood stood ready beside the stove. By the time August entered, shaking water from his coat, Daisy had the stove lit and was sweeping years of dust out the door. You work fast, he commented, hanging his wet coat on a peg by the door. Growing up poor teaches you to make the best of what you have, she replied, adding more wood to the growing fire. Outside, the storm unleashed its fury. Rain lashed against the small windows and thunder rolled across the prairie. August secured the door against the wind and helped Daisy move the table closer to the stove's warmth. Looks like we'll be here for a while, he said, retrieving some food from their supplies. These spring storms can last for hours. They ate a simple meal, listening to the rain hammer against the roof. The small shack grew pleasantly warm as the stove worked its magic, and Daisy found herself relaxing for the first time in days. Tell me about this friend we're going to see, she said, curious about their destination. Daniel Blackwood. We served as marshals together, August explained. When I was forced out, he resigned in protest, used his savings to buy a small ranch near the Niobrara River. He's a good man, one of the few I trust completely. And he won't mind harboring a fugitive, August smiled. Daniel has strong opinions about justice versus law. He'll welcome you. What about his family? Won't they be at risk? His wife died of fever 3 years ago. It's just him and his daughter, Lily. She's 12 now, smart as a whip and twice as spirited. Affection colored August's voice when he spoke of the girl. The ranch is remote enough that few visitors come calling. You'll be safe there. Daisy nodded, though a new worry nagged at her. And Silveridge, how dangerous will it be for you? August's expression grew serious. Prescott has men everywhere, but he doesn't know my face. I'll be careful. What exactly do you hope to find there? Documents proving Prescott's connection to Bernard and other outlaws. Financial records showing suspicious transactions. Witnesses willing to testify. August leaned forward, intensity in his eyes. One of Prescott's former clerks contacted me, said he has evidence that could bring the judge down, but he's afraid to come forward without protection. And you trust this clerk? Trust is a luxury in my work, August admitted, but his information has proven reliable in the past. Daisy considered this. What if I came with you? Bernard told me things, locations, names. I might recognize something important. August was already shaking his head before she finished. Too dangerous. Prescott's men will be looking for you. They'll be looking for Daisy Winters, she argued, not whoever I become. She gestured to her changed appearance. With different clothing, perhaps a change to my hair. Absolutely not, August interrupted. I didn't save you from the gallows just to lead you into another trap. His vehemence surprised her. I'm not asking for your protection, August. I'm offering to help. This is my fight, too. It's not a fight you're equipped for, he insisted. Daisy's temper flared. Because I'm a woman? Or because you think I'm still that naive girl who fell for Bernard's lies? Because Prescott won't hesitate to kill you on sight, August said firmly. Your testimony could destroy him, and he knows it. All the more reason I should help bring him down, Daisy countered. I'm already dead in the eyes of the law. What more do I have to lose? August stood abruptly, pacing the small confines of the shack. Your life, Daisy. You have your life to lose. The genuine concern in his voice diffused her anger somewhat. A life in hiding is hardly a life at all, she said more gently. At least this way I'd be fighting for something that matters. August stopped pacing, turning to face her. You matter, he said simply. Your future matters. The words hung between them, charged with an emotion neither was prepared to name. Outside, the storm continued to rage, mirroring the conflict within the small shack. Finally, August sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. We'll discuss this with Daniel when we reach the ranch. He knows Silveridge better than I do. If he thinks there's a way you can help without putting yourself in direct danger, I'll consider it. It wasn't the answer Daisy wanted, but she recognized it as the most concession she was likely to get. Fair enough. As evening approached, the storm showed no signs of abating. August made a cursory check on the horses before declaring they would need to spend the night in the shack. The creek near here will be flooded by now, he explained. Better to wait until morning when we can see the terrain clearly. This presented a new awkwardness. The shack contained only one narrow cot. August immediately offered it to Daisy, saying he would sleep on the floor near the stove. Don't be ridiculous, Daisy protested. The floor is hard and cold. The cot is big enough for both of us if we're careful. August looked uncomfortable. That wouldn't be proper. Daisy couldn't help but laugh. I've been branded an outlaw's woman and nearly hanged. I think propriety is the least of my concerns. Despite her bravado, when they finally settled onto the cot, August insisting on lying atop the blanket while she was beneath it, Daisy felt an unexpected nervousness. They lay back to back, a careful few inches separating them, the small cot creaking with every movement. "August," she whispered after several minutes of tense silence. "Yes, thank you for saving my life, for everything." His response was so quiet she almost missed it. "You're worth saving, Daisy." Those simple words touched something deep inside her, a place that had been wounded by Bernard's betrayal and the town's quick condemnation. In August's voice, she heard a conviction that made her believe, just maybe, he was right. Sleep came easier than expected, the rhythm of the rain and August's steady breathing lulling her into a dreamless rest. When she woke hours later, she found herself curled against his broad back, seeking his warmth in the chill of the night. The stove had burned low, casting the shack in dim, orange light. Carefully, so as not to wake him, Daisy extracted herself and padded to the stove to add more wood. As the flames brightened, she studied August's sleeping form. In repose, the hard lines of his face softened, making him appear younger and less burdened. The scar along his jaw stood out starkly against his skin, raising questions about its origin. She wondered what kind of life he led when he wasn't rescuing women from gallows or pursuing corrupt judges. Did he have a home somewhere, people who cared for him? The realization that she knew so little about him, despite trusting him with her life, struck her forcefully. August stirred, his instincts apparently alerting him to her scrutiny. His eyes opened, immediately alert despite his recent sleep. "Everything all right?" he asked, sitting up. "Fine," Daisy assured him. "Just adding wood to the fire." He nodded, checking his pocket watch. Almost dawn, the storms passed. True enough, the rain had stopped, though water still dripped steadily from the eaves. August rose and stretched, his tall frame filling the small space. Daisy busied herself with preparing a light breakfast from their supplies, conscious of his presence in a way she hadn't been before. "The creek will still be high," August observed as they ate. "We'll need to head north to find a safe crossing." "Will that delay our arrival at Daniel's ranch?" "By a few hours, nothing more. We should still reach it by nightfall." They packed up quickly, eager to be on their way after the forced confinement. The world outside the shack was transformed, washed clean by the storm, with puddles reflecting the brightening sky and the scent of damp earth rising to meet them. The detour around the flooded creek took them through rolling hills dotted with spring wildflowers. Despite the circumstances, Daisy found herself enjoying the ride, the beauty of the landscape a balm to her troubled spirit. By mid-afternoon, the terrain began to change, with more trees appearing and the land rising into gentle bluffs. August led them through a stand of cottonwoods to reveal a vista overlooking a picturesque valley. In the distance, Daisy could make out a small ranch nestled against the backdrop of the river. "Daniel's place," August confirmed, noting her gaze. "We'll be there within the hour." The ranch was modest but well-maintained, a sturdy two-story house, a large barn, corrals, and several outbuildings. As they approached, a tall man with graying hair emerged from the barn, followed by a young girl who ran ahead when she spotted them. "August." The girl cried, waving enthusiastically. August's face broke into a genuine smile as he dismounted. "Lily." He caught the girl as she launched herself at him, swinging her in a circle before setting her down. "You've grown at least 3 inches since I saw you last." 4 inches, she corrected proudly. "Pa measured me on my birthday." Daniel Blackwood approached at a more sedate pace, though his expression was equally welcoming. He clasped August's hand warmly before turning curious eyes to Daisy. "This must be your friend in need of sanctuary," he said. August nodded. "Daniel Blackwood, meet Daisy Winters." Daniel's eyebrows rose slightly at her name. "The one from the newspapers, supposed to have been hanged in Redemption Creek." "The very same," August confirmed, though the newspapers got most of the story wrong. Daniel studied Daisy thoughtfully. They usually do. He extended his hand to her. Welcome to Blackwood Ranch, Miss Winters. Any friend of August's is welcome here. Daisy shook his hand, relieved by the lack of judgment in his gaze. Thank you for taking such a risk. Daniel waved off her concern. Out here, we make our own judgments about right and wrong. Come inside, you both look like you could use a hot meal and a proper rest. The interior of the Blackwood home was warm and inviting, with simple but comfortable furnishings, and the unmistakable touches of a home where a child was being raised, books stacked on side tables, a half-finished sampler on a chair, a collection of polished stones arrayed on the mantelpiece. While Daniel showed August to the washroom, Lily appointed herself Daisy's guide. You'll stay in the guest room upstairs, the girl explained, leading the way. It has the best view of the sunrise. The room was small but charming, with a patchwork quilt on the bed and curtains that matched the spring green of the meadow visible through the window. It's lovely, Daisy said sincerely. Lily beamed. Pa said you might be staying a while. I hope you do. We don't get many visitors, especially ladies. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. Pa tries, but he doesn't know the first thing about braiding hair. Daisy laughed, immediately charmed by the girl's frankness. Well, I happen to be quite skilled at braiding. Perhaps I could show you some styles. Lily's eyes lit up. Would you? That would be wonderful. Their conversation was interrupted by Daniel calling them down for dinner. The meal was simple but delicious: venison stew, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. Throughout dinner, August and Daniel exchanged news of mutual acquaintances and discussed changes in the territory, carefully avoiding any mention of Judge Prescott or Daisy's situation in Lily's presence. After Lily reluctantly went to bed, the adults gathered in the parlor where Daniel poured 3 glasses of whiskey. Now, he said, settling into his chair, tell me what exactly you're planning, August. August outlined his intentions regarding Silveridge and the evidence against Judge Prescott. Daniel listened attentively, asking occasional pointed questions about the reliability of August's sources and the extent of Prescott's influence. And where do you fit into all this? Daniel asked Daisy directly. Before August could speak, Daisy answered firmly. I want to help bring Prescott to justice. I believe I can identify people and places connected to his operations. Daniel glanced at August, who looked distinctly uncomfortable. I take it you two aren't in agreement on this point. It's too dangerous, August insisted. Prescott's men will be watching for her. They'll be watching for Daisy Winters, she countered, repeating her earlier argument. Not whoever I become. Daniel considered this, stroking his beard thoughtfully. She has a point, August. A disguise, a new name, it could work. Or it could get her killed, August said sharply. That's my risk to take, Daisy reminded him. Daniel raised a hand to forestall further argument. Let's sleep on it. Things often look different in the morning light. Despite Daniel's suggestion, August found Daisy on the front porch later that night, staring at the star-filled sky. Couldn't sleep, he asked, joining her at the railing. Too much on my mind, she admitted. This is the first time in weeks I've been able to see the stars without bars in the way. They stood in silence for a while, the night sounds of the prairie surrounding them. I understand why you want to go to Silveridge, August said finally, but you need to understand what you'd be risking. I do understand, Daisy replied, but I also understand what it means to live in fear. Bernard took my trust and Prescott nearly took my life. I want something back, my dignity at the very least. August turned to face her. What if I told you there was another way? A way to start fresh, to build that peaceful life you said you wanted. Running away, you mean? Daisy shook her head. I've been running my whole life, August. From poverty, from my father's drinking, from a future that looked unbearably bleak. I'm tired of running. It's not running if you're moving towards something instead of away from it, August argued. Daniel knows people in Oregon Territory, good people who wouldn't ask questions about your past. Daisy studied his face in the moonlight. Is that what you want? For me to disappear to Oregon while you risk your life confronting Prescott? What I want, August said quietly, is for you to be safe. And what about justice? Doesn't that matter to you anymore? Of course it does, but not at any cost. His hand moved as if to touch her face, then dropped away. Not at the cost of your life. Daisy caught his retreating hand, holding it between both of hers. What happened to the man who believed in restoring balance, who saved me because he knew the difference between justice and vengeance? August's fingers tightened around hers. He met a woman who made him question whether justice is worth the price of losing someone he's come to care about. The admission hung between them, changing the very air they breathed. Daisy's heart quickened, but she pressed on. Then you understand why I can't hide while you face this danger alone. I've come to care about you too, August, more than I thought possible in such a short time. In the silver moonlight, August's expression softened. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and brushed his lips against hers, a kiss so gentle it was barely more than a whisper. When he started to withdraw, Daisy rose on her toes, one hand sliding to the nape of his neck to draw him back. Their second kiss was deeper, filled with the longing and fear they'd both been holding at bay. When they finally parted, August rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. "You deserve better than this life I lead," he murmured. "Better than a man who lives in the shadows." "I don't want better," Daisy replied. "I want real, and you, August Reed, are the most real man I've ever known." He pulled her into his arms then, holding her against the solid warmth of his chest as if he could shield her from the world through sheer force of will. Daisy closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. The next morning brought clarity in the form of compromise. Over breakfast, Daniel proposed a plan that addressed both August's concerns and Daisy's determination. "Silveridge has a new hotel on the edge of town," Daniel explained. "The owner, Martha Jenkins, is an old friend and no friend of Prescott's. She lost her husband to one of the judge's land-grabbing schemes." "You think she'd help us?" August asked. Daniel nodded. "Martha's been waiting for a chance to strike back at Prescott. She could give Daisy a position at the hotel, maid, laundress, something inconspicuous that would allow her to observe without drawing attention." "And what about you?" Daisy asked August. "I'd take a room at the hotel as a cattle buyer. That would give me freedom to move around town, make contacts, meet with the clerk." Daniel leaned forward. "Meanwhile, I'd be nearby, not in town, but close enough to provide backup if needed. I still have friends in the marshal's office who'd listen if we brought them solid evidence." August considered the plan, his expression thoughtful. "It could work," he admitted reluctantly, "but Daisy would need a complete change of appearance and a solid cover story." "Martha can help with that," Daniel assured him. "She's quite resourceful." "And if things go wrong," August pressed. "Then we have escape routes planned and meeting points established," Daniel said. "No operation is without risk, August, you know that. But this gives us our best chance of success with reasonable precautions." August looked at Daisy, conflict evident in his eyes. "You're certain this is what you want?" "I'm certain," she replied steadily. "This is our chance to end Prescott's reign of terror and clear my name. I won't spend my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when his men might find me." After a long moment, August nodded. "Very well, but we do this carefully by the book, no unnecessary risks." "Of course," Daisy agreed, relief flooding through her. "When do we leave?" "Not for a few days," Daniel said. "We need time to prepare properly. Martha needs warning, and we should work on your new identity." Over the next 3 days, Daisy underwent a transformation. With Lily's enthusiastic assistance, she darkened her auburn hair to a rich brown using walnut husks. Daniel's late wife's clothing was altered to fit her smaller frame, creating a wardrobe appropriate for a working woman of modest means. Most importantly, she and August worked on her backstory, creating Dora Miller, a widow from Kansas seeking work in the expanding Western territories. They rehearsed the details until Daisy could recite them in her sleep, incorporating enough truth to make the lies convincing. August, meanwhile, prepared his own disguise as Andrew Collins, a cattle buyer from Missouri with connections to Eastern markets. The transformation was subtle but effective. He grew out his stubble into a short beard, adopted wire-rimmed spectacles, and exchanged his worn trail clothes for the more polished attire of a business traveler. On the evening before their departure, Daisy found August in the barn, methodically checking their supplies. In the lantern light, his face was set in grim concentration. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, leaning against the stall door. August looked up, his expression softening at the sight of her. "Just making sure we're prepared for every contingency. Daniel says you always were thorough to a fault. In this line of work, overlooking details gets people killed." He straightened, setting aside the saddle he'd been inspecting. "You've changed," he observed, taking in her darkened hair and altered appearance. "Do you approve?" Daisy asked, turning slowly to display her transformation. "I preferred you as yourself," August said honestly. "But I have to admit, you make a convincing Dora Miller." Daisy stepped closer, her hand coming to rest on his arm. "I'm still me underneath it all, just as you're still August beneath Andrew Collins's spectacles and fancy waistcoat." His hand covered hers. "That's what worries me. If Prescott's men look closely enough." "They won't," Daisy assured him. "People see what they expect to see. No one will be looking for a condemned woman working as a hotel maid." August sighed, pulling her gently into his arms. "I wish I shared your confidence." "You don't have to," Daisy said, resting her head against his chest. "Just trust me enough to try." "I do trust you," he murmured into her hair. "It's the rest of the world I'm suspicious of." Daisy laughed softly. "A healthy perspective in your line of work." August tilted her chin up, his eyes serious. "Promise me something?" "What? If things go wrong, if there's any sign of danger, you'll leave immediately. No heroics, no waiting for me. You head straight for the meeting point." Daisy wanted to argue but recognized the fear behind his request. "I promise if there's real danger, I'll go to the meeting point, but you have to promise the same." August nodded. "I promise." Their journey to Silveridge took 2 days, with Daniel accompanying them partway before branching off to establish his position at a small homestead owned by a former marshal. Throughout the journey, they refined their plan and rehearsed their roles, until August was satisfied they could withstand scrutiny. Silveridge proved to be larger than Daisy had expected, a bustling town that had grown rapidly with the discovery of silver in the nearby mountains. The main street boasted a bank, several saloons, a courthouse, and various businesses catering to miners and travelers. At the edge of town stood the Silver Star Hotel, an impressive 3-story structure with wide verandas and large windows. "Remember," August murmured as they approached, "from this moment on, we're strangers who just happened to arrive on the same stage. Keep your head down and let Martha take the lead." Daisy nodded, adjusting the shawl around her shoulders and adopting the slightly hunched posture they had practiced, making herself less noticeable, less memorable. Martha Jenkins proved to be exactly as Daniel had described, a formidable woman in her 50s with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She greeted Andrew Collins with professional courtesy while sizing up Dora Miller with a calculating gaze. "You'll do," she declared after examining Daisy's references, forged by Daniel with impressive skill. "I need someone for the 3rd floor, changing linens, bringing up hot water, that sort of thing. Pay is fair, room and board included. You can start immediately." "Thank you, madam," Daisy replied, keeping her eyes appropriately lowered. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." Martha showed her to a small room in the attic, simple but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and chest of drawers. "Staff meals are in the kitchen at 6, noon, and 7. Uniforms in the drawer. Any questions?" "No, madam," Martha nodded approvingly. "Good. Report to Mrs. Benson in the kitchen when you're settled. She'll explain your duties." Once alone, Daisy quickly changed into the plain gray dress and white apron that constituted her uniform. The transformation was complete. Daisy Winters had vanished entirely, replaced by Dora Miller, an unremarkable hotel maid. Her room afforded a view of the main street, including the courthouse where Judge Prescott presided. As she watched people coming and going, Daisy wondered how many were involved in the judge's corrupt enterprises, how many innocent lives had been destroyed by his greed. Her first few days at the Silver Star established her routine and allowed her to learn the rhythm of the hotel. Andrew Collins had taken a room on the 3rd floor, allowing occasional brief encounters as Daisy performed her duties. They were careful to maintain their distance in public, communicating through notes left in predetermined locations. On her fourth day, Daisy was delivering fresh towels when she overheard a conversation from the partially open door of room 312. "Prescott wants it handled quietly," a man's voice said. "No witnesses, no questions." "What about the woman?" a second voice asked. "The one that got away in Redemption Creek, still no sign of her. Prescott's offering $500 to anyone who brings her in dead or alive." Daisy froze, her heart pounding. Carefully, she arranged the towels on her cart to create a reason to linger. What'd she look like again? The second voice asked. Auburn hair, green eyes, about 5'4", pretty by all accounts, traveling with a tall fella, possibly an ex-lawman. They could be anywhere by now. Prescott doesn't think so, says she's the type to seek revenge. Figures she might turn up around here trying to clear her name. Daisy forced herself to move on, her mind racing. That evening, she left a carefully coded note for August, informing him of what she'd overheard. His response came the next morning. A note slipped under her door before dawn. "Meeting the clerk tonight. Stay alert. Be ready to leave if necessary." Throughout the day, Daisy maintained her role as the efficient, unremarkable maid, all while observing the hotel guests with newfound wariness. She noted the arrival of two hard-faced men who registered without luggage, men whose eyes constantly scanned their surroundings with professional vigilance. When she mentioned them to Martha during a quiet moment, the older woman nodded grimly. "Prescott's men," she confirmed in a whisper. "They've been coming around more often lately. Keep your distance." That evening, as Daisy was finishing her duties, August appeared in the service corridor, startling her. "The clerk didn't show," he said without preamble, his voice low and urgent. "Something's wrong." "Could he have been delayed?" Daisy suggested. August shook his head. "Daniel checked his boarding house. His room was ransacked, and there's blood on the floor. Ice formed in Daisy's stomach. Do you think Prescott discovered him? It seems likely, which means we may be compromised as well." August ran a hand through his hair, a rare display of agitation. "We need to leave tonight." "But what about the evidence? Without it, Prescott goes free and I remain a fugitive." "There might be another way," August said. Daniel made contact with a former associate of Bernard's, a man named Carter, who apparently kept records of all his dealings with Prescott as insurance. Bernard never mentioned anyone named Carter. Daisy frowned. He operated under various aliases. "The point is, he's willing to talk, but only to you." "Me? Why?" "He doesn't trust lawmen, former or otherwise, but he knew about your relationship with Bernard and believes you were genuinely innocent of his crimes." Daisy considered this. "Where is he?" "A cabin about 15 miles from here." "Daniel's with him now." "Then we should go immediately," Daisy decided. August nodded. "Pack only what you need. Meet me at the stables in 20 minutes, and Daisy, be careful. Those men who arrived today are Prescott's elite trackers. They're dangerous." As August slipped away, Daisy returned to her room to gather her few possessions. She had just finished packing when a knock came at her door. Cautiously, she opened it to find Martha. "Two men were asking about new staff," the older woman said without preamble. "Described someone matching your appearance before the changes. I sent them on a wild goose chase, but they'll be back. You need to go now." "Thank you," Daisy said sincerely. "For everything." Martha pressed something into her hand, a small revolver. "It's loaded." "Hope you don't need it, but better safe than sorry." Daisy tucked the weapon into her pocket. "What about you? Won't you be in danger when they discover I'm gone?" Martha smiled grimly. "They can't touch me without cause. I employ dozens of girls. How am I to know the backgrounds of each one? Besides, I've been waiting years to cause Prescott trouble." With a quick embrace, Daisy bid Martha farewell and made her way cautiously toward the stables. The night was dark, with clouds obscuring the moon and stars good for concealment, but making navigation difficult. She was nearly to the stables when instinct made her pause in the shadow of a water trough. Moments later, two figures emerged from the alley beside the hotel, the hard-faced men she'd noted earlier. They were moving purposefully toward the stables, weapons visible at their sides. Daisy's heart sank. Somehow they'd discovered the plan. She needed to warn August, but how? Moving as silently as possible, she circled around behind the livery, searching for another entrance. A small window at the back provided a view into the dimly lit interior. August was there, saddling 2 horses, his back to the main doors where the men would enter. Daisy tapped urgently on the glass, praying he would hear. August's head snapped up at the sound. When he spotted her, she motioned frantically toward the front of the building, miming men with guns. Understanding dawned on his face immediately. He nodded once, then moved swiftly to extinguish the lantern, plunging the stable into darkness. Daisy forced the window open and climbed through, dropping silently onto a pile of hay. Across the stable, she heard the main doors creak open, followed by the sound of cautious footsteps. "Collins," a voice called, "we know you're in here. Judge Prescott would like a word." August appeared beside Daisy, his finger to his lips. He pointed to a small door at the rear of the stable that apparently led to a paddock beyond. "No need for this to get messy," the voice continued. "Just tell us where the Winters woman is and you might walk away from this." August took Daisy's hand, leading her toward the back door. They had almost reached it when a board creaked beneath Daisy's foot. Instantly, a shot rang out, splintering the wood beside her head. "Run," August ordered, shoving her toward the door as he drew his own weapon. Daisy burst into the paddock, August close behind. More shots followed, but the darkness worked in their favor. They sprinted across the open space toward a stand of trees that bordered the town. "The horses," Daisy gasped as they reached the shelter of the trees. "We'll have to find others," August replied grimly. "They'll be watching the stables now." They pushed deeper into the woods, moving as quickly as they dared in the darkness. Behind them, shouts indicated a search was underway. Lanterns bobbed among the trees, but the pursuers seemed uncertain of their direction. "This way," August whispered, guiding Daisy toward a small stream. "We'll follow the water to mask our trail." For nearly an hour they waded through the cold water, their progress slow but steady. Eventually, the sounds of pursuit faded, and August led them back onto land, heading east through increasingly rugged terrain. "Where are we going?" Daisy asked when they paused to rest. "There's a trapper's cabin about 3 miles from here," August explained. "Daniel and I used it as a backup location. With luck, he'll think to check there when we don't arrive at Carter's place." Dawn was breaking when they finally reached the cabin, a crude structure nearly hidden among the pines. August approached cautiously, checking for signs of recent occupation before declaring it safe. The interior was dusty but intact, with basic supplies still stored in a small cupboard. August quickly built a fire in the stone hearth while Daisy took inventory of their resources. "Food enough for a few days," she reported. "Water from the stream nearby, blankets, some ammunition." August nodded, warming his hands by the growing flames. "We should be safe here for now. Prescott's men won't know about this place." Daisy sank onto a rough-hewn bench, the events of the night catching up with her. "They were waiting for us, August. How did they know? The clerk must have talked before they killed him," August reasoned. "Or they've been watching the hotel, noticed our arrivals coincided. What do we do now?" Carter was our last hope for evidence against Prescott. August was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "Not necessarily our last hope," he said finally. "There's still you, me. Your testimony about Bernard, combined with what we already know about Prescott's operations, might be enough if we can get it to the right people." Daisy considered this. "You mean the federal authorities? Would they believe a woman condemned for association with an outlaw?" "They might, with proper introduction. Daniel has connections in the territorial government, men who have suspected Prescott for years but lacked sufficient evidence to move against him." "And you think my word would be enough?" August met her gaze. "Your word, plus the pattern of Prescott's actions against those who oppose him. The suspicious deaths, the land seizures, the corrupt trials. Together it creates a compelling case." Hope flickered in Daisy's chest. "Then we need to find Daniel. We will. Once it's dark, I'll make my way to our meeting point. You'll stay here where it's safe." Daisy was already shaking her head. "We stay together. I'm not letting you risk yourself alone again." August looked as though he might argue, then sighed. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met, Daisy Winters." "Is that a complaint?" she asked, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. "No," he admitted, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. "It's one of the things I admire most about you." The gentle touch of his fingers against her cheek sparked something between them, a current of emotion too powerful to deny. Daisy leaned into his hand, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm scared, August," she confessed, "not of Prescott or his men, but of what happens after. If we succeed, if my name is cleared, what then? Where do I go? Who do I become?" August drew her closer. "Whoever you want to be, wherever you want to go." He paused, vulnerability clear in his eyes. "Though I had hoped you might consider staying with me." "Staying with you," Daisy repeated softly. "As what exactly?" "As my wife, if you'll have me." The words came out in a rush, as though he'd been holding them back for too long. "I know it's sudden, and our circumstances are far from ideal, but these past days have shown me what truly matters in life, and what matters to me is you, Daisy." Joy bloomed in Daisy's heart, pushing aside the fear and uncertainty that had been her constant companions. "Yes," she whispered, her hands framing his face. "Yes, I'll have you, August Reed, in whatever life we build together." Their kiss was a promise of love, of future, of possibilities neither had dared imagine before. When they finally parted, August pressed his forehead against hers, his breath uneven. "When this is over," he vowed, "we'll do this properly. With a preacher and witnesses and whatever kind of celebration you desire." Daisy smiled. "All I desire is you, safe and by my side." They rested through the day, taking turns keeping watch while the other slept. As evening approached, they prepared to leave for the meeting point, a small church in an abandoned mining settlement about 5 miles distant. The journey through the darkening forest was tense but uneventful. They moved cautiously, alert for any sign of pursuit, but the woods remained peaceful around them. Stars emerged overhead, providing just enough light to navigate by once their eyes adjusted. The abandoned settlement appeared as a collection of shadowy structures silhouetted against the night sky. The church stood at its center, its steeple listing slightly but still reaching toward heaven. No light showed from within, but as they approached, the door opened to reveal Daniel's familiar figure. "Thank God," he said, ushering them inside. "I feared the worst when you didn't arrive at Carter's." "Prescott's men were waiting at the hotel," August explained. "How did you know to come here?" "When you missed the rendezvous, I checked all our fallback positions. Been here since midday." Daniel secured the door behind them. "Carter's with me. He's nervous, but he's held onto his evidence." In the dim light of a shuttered lantern, Daisy could make out a second figure sitting in one of the few remaining pews, a slight man with thinning hair and spectacles perched on a narrow nose. "Miss Winters," he acknowledged, rising to his feet. "You look different than Bernard described." "Necessary precautions," Daisy replied. "You worked with Bernard?" Carter nodded. "I kept his books, recorded all transactions, including those with Judge Prescott. Bernard may have been many things, but he was meticulous about his finances, insisted on documentation for every payment." "And you have these records?" August asked. Carter patted a leather satchel beside him. "Ledgers, receipts, even letters from Prescott himself outlining specific jobs he wanted handled. Bernard kept everything as insurance. When he was killed, I retrieved them from his hiding place." "Why come forward now?" Daisy questioned. "Why not earlier when I was on trial?" Carter had the grace to look ashamed. "Fear mainly. Prescott's reach is long and his vengeance swift, but when I heard how he was hunting you down even after nearly hanging you." He shrugged. "Seemed like time to take a stand." Daniel laid out their revised plan. With Carter's documentation and Daisy's testimony, they would bypass local authorities entirely and take their case directly to the territorial governor in Capital City, a 3-day ride to the east. "I've sent word ahead through channels I trust," Daniel explained. "The governor will grant us an audience upon arrival. Once he sees the evidence, he can dispatch federal marshals to arrest Prescott." "And if Prescott's influence extends to the governor's office?" August asked. "Then we continue to the federal court in St. Louis," Daniel replied. "But I don't believe it will come to that. Governor Hayes has been looking for grounds to remove Prescott for years." They spent the night in the abandoned church, taking turns on watch. At first light, they set out eastward, traveling cross-country to avoid the main roads where Prescott's men might be patrolling. Daniel had brought extra horses, including one for Daisy, a steady sorrel mare with surprising stamina. The journey was arduous, their progress slowed by the need for caution. They avoided settlements, camped without fires, and kept to cover whenever possible. Carter proved surprisingly resilient for a bookkeeper, though his city-bred sensibilities were clearly strained by the rustic conditions. On the second night, as they camped in a sheltered ravine, Carter shared more details about Bernard's operation and Prescott's involvement. It started small, he explained. Prescott would identify properties he wanted: farms with water rights, land with mineral potential. He'd have Bernard intimidate the owners, maybe rustle some cattle or damage crops. When the owners complained to the law, they'd find no help since Prescott controlled the local sheriff. If they still wouldn't sell, August prompted, escalation, barn fires, threats against family members. If all else failed, Bernard would engineer a confrontation that ended with the owner dead supposedly while resisting arrest or committing a crime. Daisy listened with growing horror. "And I never suspected," she whispered. "Bernard told me he was a cattle buyer traveling on business." Carter looked at her sympathetically. He was convincing when he needed to be, and he kept his worlds separate: his work for Prescott, his legitimate business interests, his personal life with you. Until they collided, Daisy said bitterly. Yes, Carter agreed. When Bernard started talking about leaving the territory, settling down, Prescott couldn't risk him taking his knowledge elsewhere. So Prescott arranged for Bernard to be caught and killed, August concluded. Then tried to eliminate Daisy as well to tie up loose ends, Carter nodded. Prescott doesn't leave witnesses. The third day of travel brought them within sight of Capital City, a growing settlement of substantial buildings arranged around a central square dominated by the territorial government offices. They approached cautiously, sending Daniel ahead to confirm their meeting with the governor while the others waited in a small grove outside town. When Daniel returned, his expression was grim. Prescott's here, arrived yesterday for a judicial conference. His men are watching the government building. Does he know we're coming? August asked sharply. I don't think so. Seems more like a precautionary measure, but it complicates matters. After discussion, they devised a new approach. Daniel would create a diversion to draw away Prescott's watchers, while August escorted Daisy and Carter directly to the governor's private residence on the outskirts of town. As dusk fell, they put their plan into action. Daniel rode boldly into town, making sure to be recognized by Prescott's men before leading them on a chase in the opposite direction from the governor's home. Meanwhile, August guided Daisy and Carter along back streets and alleyways, avoiding the main thoroughfares. Governor Hayes proved to be a distinguished man in his 60s, with shrewd eyes and a reputation for incorruptibility. He received them in his study, listening without interruption as they presented their evidence: Carter's meticulous records, August's observations from his time as a marshal, and finally, Daisy's testimony about her relationship with Bernard and the events leading to her near execution. When they finished, the governor studied the documents spread across his desk, his expression grave. This is most disturbing, he said finally. Judge Prescott has been a powerful figure in this territory for many years. These accusations, if proven true, represent a profound betrayal of public trust. They are true, sir, Daisy said firmly. I nearly died because of that man's corruption. Hayes nodded slowly. I believe you, Miss Winters. The evidence is compelling, particularly these financial records. He tapped Carter's ledgers. What troubles me is ensuring Prescott faces proper justice. He has allies throughout the territorial system. Then remove it from the territorial system, August suggested. This level of corruption warrants federal intervention. Indeed it does. Hayes rose from his desk. I will send a telegram to the Justice Department immediately, requesting federal marshals. In the meantime, you will all remain here as my guests. My home is secure, and Prescott would not dare move against the governor's residence. True to his word, Hayes dispatched his most trusted aide with an urgent telegram. Daniel rejoined them after successfully eluding his pursuers, bringing news that Prescott appeared unaware of their presence in the capital. For 2 days they waited in the governor's home, tension mounting as they anticipated word from the federal authorities. Daisy found herself unable to relax, jumping at every sound, expecting Prescott's men to appear at any moment. On the evening of the second day, August found her on the veranda, staring at the stars that had become her companions through this ordeal. "You should rest," he said gently, joining her at the railing. "I can't," Daisy admitted. "Not until this is finished one way or another." August took her hand, his touch grounding her. "It will be finished soon. The evidence is overwhelming. Prescott will face justice. And then we start our life together," August said simply. "Wherever you want, doing whatever brings you happiness." Daisy leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "I've been thinking about that, about what I want." "And what have you decided?" "I want a home," Daisy said softly. "Not just a place, but a feeling, security, peace, the chance to wake each morning without fear." August's arm encircled her waist. "We'll have that, I promise." "What about you?" Daisy asked. "What does August Reed want from life?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "For so long, my life has been defined by pursuit of justice, of redemption, of making right what others have made wrong. I think I'm ready for something different, something built rather than chased." "Like a home," Daisy suggested. "Like a home," August agreed. "With you." The peace of the moment was shattered by the arrival of a messenger bearing news that changed everything. Federal marshals had arrived in Capital City with warrants for Judge Prescott's arrest. However, warned by an informant, Prescott had fled, taking with him documents that implicated others in his criminal enterprise. "He's heading west," Governor Hayes informed them grimly, "back toward his power base where he has men loyal to him." "Directly through the territory where he'll be looking for us," Daniel observed. "The marshals are in pursuit," Hayes continued, "but Prescott knows the land. They've requested any assistance we can provide, particularly from those familiar with his operations." August exchanged glances with Daniel. "We know his likely routes, his hiding places." "It's too dangerous," Daisy protested. "He wants you dead, August, all of us dead." "Which is precisely why we must help," August countered. "As long as Prescott remains free, none of us will ever truly be safe." Despite Daisy's objections, the decision was made. August and Daniel would join the federal marshals in their pursuit of Prescott, while Daisy and Carter would remain under the governor's protection. The men would depart at first light. That night, alone in the guest room they'd been assigned, Daisy faced August with determination. "I'm coming with you," she declared. "Absolutely not," August replied. "Prescott wants you dead more than any of us. You'll be safe here." "I don't want safety if it means watching you ride into danger without me," Daisy insisted. "We've come this far together, we'll finish it together." August took her shoulders gently. "Daisy, please understand, if anything happened to you, and if anything happened to you," she interrupted. "How could I live with myself, knowing I might have helped but chose to hide instead?" They argued long into the night, each stubborn in their conviction. It was only when August saw the unyielding resolve in Daisy's eyes that he finally relented. "You stay with the main party," he stipulated. "No heroics, no separate ventures. You follow orders without question." "Agreed," Daisy said quickly, before he could change his mind. At dawn, they set out with Daniel and 2 federal marshals who had arrived during the night, experienced men named Ross and Finley. The governor provided fresh horses and supplies, along with detailed maps of the territory. "Prescott will be heading for Miller's Crossing," Daniel predicted as they rode. "He has a fortified ranch there with men loyal to him." "Then we need to intercept him before he reaches it," Marshal Ross determined. They pushed their mounts hard, following the most direct route west, while another group of marshals took a northern approach to cut off potential escape routes. The terrain grew increasingly rugged as they left the rolling plains for the foothills that preceded the mountains. On the second day of pursuit, they found signs that Prescott had passed through a hastily abandoned campsite with embers still warm. They were gaining ground. He's traveling with at least 3 men, August observed, examining tracks around the campsite. One horse is favoring its left foreleg. They'll have to slow down soon. By late afternoon, they reached a narrow canyon that offered the only passage through a line of steep bluffs. Marshal Finley studied it with concern. Perfect place for an ambush, he noted. Is there another way around? Daisy asked. Daniel shook his head. Not for miles. We'd lose too much time. Then we proceed with caution, Marshal Ross decided. Finley and I will take the lead. Reed, you and Blackwood cover our flanks. Miss Winters stays to the rear. They entered the canyon in formation, every sense alert for danger. The shadows lengthened as the sun dipped toward the horizon, creating patches of darkness that could conceal a waiting enemy. They were halfway through when the first shot rang out, echoing off the canyon walls. Marshal Finley's horse reared in panic as its rider slumped forward, blood spreading across his shirt. "Take cover," August shouted, pulling Daisy from her horse and behind a large boulder as more shots followed. Marshal Ross returned fire, pinpointing one of the shooters on a ledge above them. Daniel circled wide, using the terrain for cover as he worked his way toward a position where he could flank their attackers. "Stay down," August ordered Daisy, checking his weapon. "I'm going to help Daniel." "August, wait," but he was already moving, darting from boulder to boulder as bullets struck around him. Daisy watched in horror as he scaled a near-vertical path, working his way toward the shooter's position. A movement to her right caught her attention, a figure sliding down a scree slope, taking aim at August's exposed back. Without thinking, Daisy drew the small revolver Martha had given her and fired. Her shot went wide, but it was enough to distract the attacker, giving August time to turn and defend himself. The exchange of gunfire was chaotic, echoes making it impossible to determine how many attackers remained. Marshal Ross coordinated their defense, calling out positions and providing covering fire as August and Daniel worked to outflank the ambush. Suddenly, a voice called out from above, a voice Daisy recognized with a chill of fear. "I know you're there, Miss Winters." Judge Prescott's cultured tones rang through the canyon. "Your outlaw lover couldn't escape justice, and neither will you. It's over, Prescott," Marshal Ross shouted back. "Federal marshals have warrants for your arrest. Surrender now and you'll receive a fair trial." Prescott's laugh was cold. "A fair trial, like the ones I've presided over for years? I think not, Marshal." Another volley of shots followed his words. One struck dangerously close to Daisy, showering her with stone fragments. She pressed herself tighter against the boulder, heart pounding. From her position, she could see August working his way toward a point above Prescott's location. If he could reach it undetected, he would have a clear advantage. But the judge's remaining men were watching carefully, firing whenever August attempted to move. Daisy realized she could create a diversion. It was risky against everything August had made her promise, but it might give him the chance he needed. Drawing a deep breath, she called out, "You're right about one thing, Judge Prescott. Bernard couldn't escape justice, your perverted version of it anyway, insolent girl." Prescott's voice had moved slightly, his attention now focused on her. "You should have hanged in Redemption Creek. Why? Because I knew too much. Because I could expose you for what you really are, a thief and a murderer hiding behind a judge's robes." Her distraction worked. As Prescott and his men focused their attention on her position, August was able to advance unnoticed. Daniel, meanwhile, had worked his way around to the opposite side of the canyon. "You know nothing," Prescott shouted, anger making him careless. He appeared briefly at the edge of a rocky outcrop, his distinguished features contorted with rage. It was the opening August needed. His shot caught Prescott in the shoulder, spinning him away from the edge. Simultaneously, Daniel fired on the judge's remaining men, forcing them to retreat from their positions. Marshal Ross seized the advantage, moving swiftly up the canyon wall. "Federal Marshal, throw down your weapons." For a moment, it seemed Prescott's men might surrender. Then one made a desperate break, firing wildly as he ran. Daniel's return shot dropped him mid-stride. The remaining gunman surrendered, throwing his weapon down with a clatter of metal on stone. August approached cautiously, covering the man while searching for Prescott. The judge had disappeared from the outcrop where August's shot had struck him. A trail of blood indicated he was wounded but still mobile, having retreated further up the canyon. "He's getting away," Daisy called, pointing to movement among the rocks above. August and Marshal Ross pursued, following the blood trail while Daniel secured the prisoner. Daisy remained with Daniel, her heart in her throat as she watched August climb the treacherous slope after Prescott. The sound of a single gunshot echoed through the canyon, followed by silence. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Daisy waited for some sign, some word. Finally, August appeared at the top of the slope, supporting Marshal Ross, who was limping but alive. "Prescott," Daniel called up. "Dead," Ross replied, chose to take his own life rather than face trial. Relief washed over Daisy, followed immediately by concern for August. As he helped Ross down the slope, she could see blood staining his shirt sleeve. "You're hurt," she said, moving to meet them. "It's nothing," August assured her. "Bullet grazed my arm during the exchange." "Let me see," Daisy insisted, examining the wound with gentle fingers. "This needs cleaning and bandaging." As she tended to his injury, using supplies from their saddlebags, August studied her face. "You broke your promise," he said quietly. "That diversion you created was exactly the kind of risk I asked you not to take." Daisy met his gaze steadily. "It worked, didn't it?" "That's not the point. You could have been killed." "So could you," she countered. "I made a choice, August. The same choice you make every time you put yourself at risk for what's right." August sighed, his expression softening. "I suppose I can't fault your logic, even if your methods terrify me." "Then love me instead," Daisy said, echoing the words he had once spoken to her. "Love me for my courage as well as my flaws." August's hand came up to cup her cheek. "I already do, Daisy Winters, more than I can say." With Prescott dead and his surviving accomplice in custody, they made camp for the night before beginning the journey back to Capital City. Around the fire, Marshal Ross raised his cup in a toast. "To justice," he said, "long delayed but finally served." "To new beginnings," Daniel added, nodding toward August and Daisy. "To freedom," Daisy said softly, her hand finding August's. In the days that followed, the full extent of Prescott's corruption was revealed. His documents, recovered from his saddlebags, implicated numerous officials throughout the territory. Governor Hayes ordered a complete investigation, promising reforms to prevent such abuses in the future. For Daisy, the most significant outcome was the official pardon clearing her name. With her innocence established, she was free to build the life she had dreamed of, a life with August at her side. They were married a month later in Daniel's ranch house, with Lily serving as flower girl and Daniel as August's best man. Martha Jenkins made the journey from Silveridge to attend, bringing with her a beautiful wedding quilt as a gift. After the ceremony, as guests celebrated around them, August led Daisy outside to show her a surprise detailed plans for a home of their own, to be built on land adjoining Daniel's ranch. "It's perfect," Daisy whispered, studying the drawings. "But what will we do there?" "Will you return to law enforcement?" August shook his head. "I've had enough of chasing outlaws. Daniel's offered me partnership in his ranch. With his knowledge and my labor, we could build something substantial." He looked at her questioningly. "Would that suit you? Life as a rancher's wife?" Daisy's smile was radiant. "More than suit me, it's exactly the peaceful life I dreamed of." She leaned into his embrace, content in a way she had never imagined possible. "You know, when I stood on those gallows in Redemption Creek, I thought my life was over. I never expected it was just beginning." "Life has a way of surprising us," August agreed, kissing her tenderly. "Though I'd prefer fewer life-threatening surprises in our future," Daisy laughed. "I make no promises, Mr. Reed. You married a woman who's tasted freedom and found her courage. There's no going back from that." "I wouldn't want you any other way," August assured her. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "That whatever adventures life brings us, we face them together." Daisy sealed her promise with a kiss. "Together," she agreed, "always." 2 years later, Daisy stood on the porch of their completed home, watching August teach their infant son to pat the nose of a gentle mare. The ranch had prospered under the partnership of August and Daniel, growing into one of the most respected operations in the territory. Lily, now 14 and as spirited as ever, had appointed herself the baby's protector and was never far from his side. She sat nearby, working on a sampler while keeping a watchful eye on the proceedings. As Daisy observed her family, contentment filled her heart. The past with its dangers seemed distant now, like a story someone else had lived. Yet she knew that, without those trials, she might never have found her way to this life, to August's love and the peace she had always sought. When August looked up and caught her watching, his smile warmed her to her core. He lifted their son and crossed the yard to join her on the porch. "Happy?" he asked, passing the baby into her waiting arms. Daisy gazed at her husband, at the laugh lines forming around his eyes, at the scar along his jaw that she now kissed each night, at the strength and gentleness that had saved her in more ways than one. "Completely," she answered truthfully. "I was punished for loving the wrong man, but rewarded beyond measure for loving the right one." August pulled her close, their son nestled between them. "Then my life's work is complete," he murmured against her hair. "Everything else is just bonus." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Daisy offered a silent prayer of gratitude for second chances, for courage found in desperate moments, and for the love that had transformed a condemned woman into the person she was always meant to be. In the wild reaches of the frontier, where justice often faltered and mercy seemed scarce, Daisy and August had carved out their own vision of what life could be, one built on truth, strengthened by adversity, and sustained by a love that had been worth every risk they took to claim it.